She didn't leave because she woke up on a random Tuesday and suddenly decided she didn't love you anymore. I know that's exactly how it feels when the door finally shuts. It feels sudden, like the entire relationship collapsed overnight. But that's not what actually happened. By the time your brain finally realized something was wrong, the relationship had already been slowly falling apart for months. Because love rarely shatters in one dramatic moment. Most of the time, it bleeds out quietly, slowly, in 1,000 tiny moments that seem harmless at the time. Late replies, canceled plans, messages you saw but answered hours later. And each time it happened, you told yourself the same thing: I'll respond later.
I was thinking about this earlier, and it never really starts like that. Think back to the beginning, the honeymoon phase, back when everything felt effortless. There was a time when she smiled every single time your name popped up on her phone. You remember those late-night calls that completely destroyed your sleep schedule, but neither of you cared. You would send random messages in the middle of the day just to tell her you were thinking about her. And she would tell her friends about you with that quiet excitement people get when they think they finally found someone special. To her, you weren't just another guy she was seeing. You were someone she believed in, someone she could actually imagine a future with. And back then, you believed it too.
You matched her energy. You showed up, and now everything shifts. That's where the neglect begins.
But here's the uncomfortable truth most people never talk about. Love rarely shatters in one dramatic moment. It bleeds out, slowly. At first, it was the late replies. You'd see her text pop up on your phone. Maybe you were working, maybe you were gaming, maybe you were just mentally exhausted from life. So you told yourself you'd reply later. An hour passed, then another, sometimes the whole day. In your mind, it made sense, but to her nervous system, it felt like rejection. Then came the canceled plans. You promised you'd take her out that weekend, but Friday night came and your energy was gone. To you, these were small, logical decisions, but to her, they slowly built a wall between the two of you. And slowly, without either of you fully realizing it, the distance became the relationship. She didn't walk away when things got hard. Her instinct wasn't to leave, it was to try harder. Her attachment system kicked into overdrive. She started sending those long paragraph messages, asking if something was wrong, asking if you were upset with her, asking if you still cared. She tried to plan dates, create moments where you two could reconnect. She was desperately trying to fix something that you didn't even realize was broken. And I know some of you will relate to this. When she did that, you felt overwhelmed, maybe even suffocated. You thought she was being dramatic, needy, too emotional, so you pulled back even more. From your perspective, you were just getting space, but from hers, she was fighting for the relationship to survive. She was patching a leak in the boat, while you were still convincing yourself it wasn't sinking. But eventually something happens when one person carries all the emotional weight. They reach a point where their energy simply runs out. There's a quiet moment where they realize they are the only one fighting. And when that realization hits, something changes. She stopped sending the long messages. She stopped asking if you were okay. She stopped trying to plan things. She stopped initiating conversations. At first, you probably didn't notice, or maybe you noticed and felt relieved. Finally, peace. Because silence feels peaceful when you're not the one feeling abandoned. For her, that silence meant something very different. It meant she had started letting go. She was already grieving the relationship while she was still inside it.
So when she finally sat you down and told you she was leaving, you were blindsided. You thought it was just a bad moment. You thought if you apologized, things would go back to normal. Because to you, the relationship had just broken that day. But the painful truth is, it broke months earlier. She had already emotionally packed her bags long before that conversation happened. You just didn't see it. And that's when the realization finally hits. You start replaying everything in your mind. The messages you ignored, the plans she tried to make, the moments she needed you while you were somewhere else entirely. Suddenly all those little moments don't feel small anymore. They stack up. But realizing it doesn't change anything. It doesn't rewind time. By the time you finally understand what you lost, she's already gone.
Losing her didn't just break your heart. It forced you to confront something you had been avoiding. The man you had slowly become, comfortable, complacent, taking her presence for granted. And maybe that's the brutal lesson hidden inside the pain. Because sometimes the people we lose are the ones who force us to grow, the ones who break our ego just enough to make us reflect and become better men, even if she's no longer around to see it. That's the hardest part. Not the breakup, not the loneliness. It's knowing someone once loved you enough to fight until they simply couldn't anymore.